Climate hysteria has officially reached its peak, and in doing so undermined itself. The United Nations climate chief, Simon Steele, has boldly declared that we have 2 years to save the world. He went on to say,
"Some of you may think the title of today's event is overly dramatic, melodramatic even."
Well, some people would certainly say that, and I'm one of them. But what does Mr. Steele actually have to say to back up these bold claims? First, he makes this claim.
"We are at the start of a race which will determine the biggest winners in a new, clean energy economy. Each country's climate responses will be key to whether they rise up the ladder or fall."
But the markets do not concur with this sentiment. If it makes economic sense to pursue the green agenda, the markets would naturally follow this trend. So why then are China and India, two of the biggest emitters of carbon dioxide in the world, still burning coal and indeed building more coal power stations? This leads me on to the next point, which is that Mr. Steele talks about global cooperation and coming together. Countries like China aren't interested in coming together for the green agenda. Why? Because it doesn't make economic sense to do so, especially when you still have a partly subsistence economy. Mr. Steele also said this.
For many countries, they will only be able to implement strong new climate plans if we see a quantum leap in climate finance this year.
So he admits that this will cost a fortune, but then goes on to undermine his entire point.
Because it's hard for any government to invest in renewables or climate resilience when Treasury coffers are bare, debt servicing costs have overtaken health spending, new borrowing is impossible, and the wolves of poverty are at the door.
So it's clear that we can't afford it. Then he rather predictably goes on to adopt the socialist language of inequality before saying this.
We need a new deal on climate finance between developed and developing countries. More concessional finance, especially for the poorest and most vulnerable countries.
Well, that translates into saying that he wants you, the British taxpayer, to pay climate reparations, and I can assure him there is no democratic mandate for that in the United Kingdom. But finally, Mr. Steele went on to say this.
At the spring meetings, we need an ambitious round of replenishment for the World Bank's International Development Association, IDA. Doing so could lift hundreds of millions of people out of poverty.
But everyone knows fundamentally that the way the world has lifted millions out of poverty is through the provision of cheap energy. And then there's one way to do that, and that's by boosting supply and bringing to an end the costly green agenda. And now we have the perfect excuse to do that. The world is apparently going to end in 2 years. Well, the UK contributes just 1% of global emissions, and only 2 years before we're all doomed, there's nothing we can do about it. So as it's too late, surely there's no need to try. We should concentrate on what we can do, improving living standards with cheap energy. As ever, let me know your thoughts, mailmog@gbnews.com.